This was one of the potential picks for the free tank from the Holiday Ops event on World of Tanks console, and it is the K91-2, and this was a vehicle that I wasn't particularly a massive fan of when it was first released because of a couple of things that got recently buffed, and that comes in the form of how the armor layout works. I believe it got a slight buff, and it is essentially a lot better in terms of its playstyle. Maybe I'm just playing it differently to when I first did the review of the K91-2, but it was certainly disappointing when it was first released, but it is completely not the case anymore. And this replay is going to showcase one of the highest damage games that I've had in the K91-2, probably the highest, to be honest with you, and it is a really good showcase of what this tank can do. And there are a few things about it that is maybe not perfect, but at the end of the day it is a tier 8 medium that is actually very powerful, and can be very fun to play, considering everything that I've kind of seen in the past with this vehicle. Now then, we take a kind of unlucky hit against the Emil, who kind of just snapped onto us whilst reversing, which is kind of annoying. We then don't pen the Indian Panzer's cupola, but either way, we can now just start to farm him, and this is what this tank is good at, just basically being a nuisance, getting yourself into a position that you can essentially keep on firing. This tank is much like the tier 10 version. It prides itself on having decent damage per minute and being able to kind of push out damage to a lot of the opponents that you might maybe try and avoid getting hit by. Now, this tank in comparison to the kind of tier 10 is not as rear-mounted, or at least I guess it's very similar, but the armor model tier for tier on this probably works a lot better than it does on the tier 10, which is the K91, and that's because of the fact that you got fairly strong armor in terms of being able to kind of push out damage on your opponents whilst remaining somewhat maneuverable, having all of that jazz in terms of being able to get up to top speed, which is lovely with the K91-2, and you can essentially go about 50 kilometers an hour, and it feels so much more active to be able to play this tank as it used to be. I don't know whether they buffed the engine power of this thing or just got it up to top speed a lot faster. Maybe they buffed the terrain resistances or something, but it feels way more kind of precise in its movements, in being able to kind of attack the opponents that you need to. Now, unfortunately, we do get knocked, and this is constant on this corner, so it's a bit unfortunate. And then the E75 comes around the corner and pens us, which is yet again annoying, but at the end of the day you've got to be involved in the fight to be able to get something out of it. And unfortunately for us, we don't manage to get any damage on the T43, which is kind of annoying, but then again, that's my fault for actually auto-aiming and rather than actually trying to aim properly. So we've got a T29 that's sat behind, and he definitely needs to get out of the game. We're going to find the back of his turret, hopefully, but of course it is a bit of an annoying turret to pen, because if we manage to hit the kind of side of the back of the turret, basically, if we hit it at a really steep angle, we can bounce quite easily. And of course, firing the standard rounds, that's probably even more likely. But luckily for us, we are using the APCR rounds at the minute, meaning that you can quite easily hit your opponents. And these rounds are super quick, like to hit the target, I mean, because most APCR rounds are fast, but these seem like almost instantaneous to be able to kind of pinpoint weak points and to hit people over distance and essentially lead your shots at the same time. And by leading your shots, you can guarantee yourself some extra track damage. We're getting pushed out by an artillery piece because, you know, seems to be the case at the moment. Well, honestly, got triggered earlier in the day when I was playing the T42, which was the other vehicle, and that will come out on a video coming soon by a T29. And I was literally taking out about 3 tanks on the corner on my own in the T42, and for some reason the T29 decided to push me out, which was brilliant. Luckily, we only took 1 hit, and then he subsequently got absolutely farmed by the enemy team. So always nice to see karma coming out and dealing with the boys. But either way, we picked up 2,700 damage, and I'm feeling like the enemies are going to push this area, so we need to get rid of them. I'm not going to push into them because, you know, you never know what TD or someone's going to be camping over in the C8, C9 area that can shoot across the valley, and just never going to be able to outspot them. So we get up into this spot, which is a good defensive spot to begin with, if people do decide to push this middle area. Now, at the beginning of the game, this spot can be very annoying to be in, because a lot of people at the beginning of the game, light tanks will poke up and crest this ridge and pen you quite easily. You can see here we're just trying to get some shots on the E75. Now, we do actually hit the E75 in that kind of pixel shot that was available to us, but we didn't manage to actually pen somehow, even though it was the cupola. No surprise there. But we do manage to pen the gun mantler of the E75 TS, and that tank is really, really good. It's actually one of the more underrated tanks, and maybe we'll feature it on the channel very, very soon, because I don't know if I've featured it very much on the channel. But either way, it's now time to go and defend base, because there's nothing worse than actually losing to cap. So I get into this position, we wait for the Tiger 2 to push a little bit too far. He does actually spot us, but that's not a problem, because what we can do is we can now just farm him as he's pushing forward. I'd go for the tracking shot so that my team can get into position to help me out with just farming him down. I don't have the hit points to trade against him, so any help is massively appreciated. Now we have a FE201 Black who actually shoots, so we're going to plow around into him. You can see the rounds just coming in, so we've got no problem in kind of poking around. And even if we do take a hit, for some reason it appeared like he was firing HE. Actually, no, that gets a lot less alpha even, sorry. I believe that gets like 150 alpha or something. But either way, we can push towards the Tiger 2. There's someone on the enemy team in the cap. We have no idea what it is. So we're going to push forward. Hopefully we can get rid of this Tiger 2. And of course, as you see me cresting this around this kind of ridge, we find the upper bit of the turret of the Tiger 2, who then decides to YOLO, and of course our teammate finishes him off, which is lovely. Fingers crossed we'll be able to continue, since we picked up 4,200 damage so far, and there are 3 vehicles on the enemy team left, one of them being an artillery piece, so not really something that we're going to be able to deal with. I'm sure our heavy tank on the opposite side will be able to deal with him. And there we go, we bounce around off the T29, which is very nice. We did overexpose ourselves. I was definitely not expecting to bounce around there. But T29 is now coming around the corner. I've got no problems with baiting him into pulling around and exposing himself a little bit more. And then as we push into the cap circle, lo and behold, the enemy T43, who we hit on the move using the excellent dispersion values of this tank on the move to be able to finish him off with the second shot. So 5,215 damage done with 2 enemies taken out right at the end of the battle as well. And yeah, we don't come top, because the Nomad steals our thunder with 4,000 damage and 2,000 base experience. But either way, we both played really well at the end of the game to secure the victory for the team. 1.6 million silver, because of the operations that's going on at the moment, because you know, having that much silver in every game is perfectly balanced and absolutely not able to be exploited by anyone whatsoever. And yeah, a really good result in the K91-2. Let's jump into the next replay, where we see a little bit of something else, where maybe we can get some assistance as well. So next replay, Canals. It's a map that is usually featured second on the channel every single video, or at least featured when it is featured. It's always the second replay for some reason, but you can basically use this map quite well as this sort of tank, because you have a little bit of armor, you can duke it out with some of the heavy tanks. You also have the mobility to get into early game positions where maybe people won't be expecting you to get into, and we're going to take a nice early game spot that I always like using. It's typically very, very good position unless you get YOLO'd by the enemy team, which can happen, but it's very, very rare that people can successfully get away with it and actually take you out in the game. But it's a risk that you have to take if you want to get into somewhere like here. But initially, we managed to pick up nearly 500 assistance damage and 500 damage, so really nice start to the game, and hopefully we'll be able to continue it. I'm blind firing this area over by the windmill, because you should always blind fire if you've got no one to shoot. Always go for the blind fire if you know roughly where someone is, and you're seeing me trying to hit that IS-2 there. Now, you've got this TD who really unfortunately gets spotted right as we actually fire, so super annoying. And then we go for this pixel shot on the side of him. Doesn't quite go where we're aiming, but that's no problem. We'll just continually fire at this area. Hopefully we can get a shot into this kind of minuscule pixel shot that we've got on the frontal area of the tank, and of course we do using the console accuracy. Then for some reason he decides to YOLO, which of course is going to get him taken out. And we finish him off pretty easily. Now, I've not done that much damage within this game, considering that a little bit of the game has kind of pushed on and there's stuff still, a fair chunk of damage in the game. We want to make sure that we're going to be able to push forward and get some more. So, I know that there's a medium tank here, the CS-44, we've got someone up behind him, so there's unlikely to be anyone else, so I decide, you know what, let's YOLO him. So instead of just stopping and trying to hit him from behind, we actually push forward, and that allows us to get into this cover behind the rock, avoiding any of the tank destroyers who are going to be in D1 and C1 and B2 or anywhere, like kind of in their base camping. So we avoid all of those, and of course, yes, we may have taken one hit, but it avoids the potential of taking, you know, 3 or 4 from anyone camping in the base. Now, we push forward quite aggressively because I know we have to help out the town area because, you know, we need to get rid of these people, and in doing so we also spot the enemies, which is nice, and I kind of push round. We've got the Canonian Jagdpanzer, which can be a little bit of an absolute troll if it remains undetected, so we set up in this sort of position. We're just hoping to spot and then hard team for them to be able to kind of deal with the opponents. Now, they don't at the moment, but that doesn't mean that they won't ever. So we're just going to maintain this sort of area, go for a little blind fire because, you know, they're probably going to pick up at that sort of point again, but we're not entirely sure. So we're just continuing our kind of route of the opponents. Now, fingers crossed, we're going to be able to pick up some more damage because, you know, 1,100 damage is, I mean, yeah, it's not a good game, so we want to make sure that we're kind of having these good games, and so we kind of set up in this position to catch anyone crossing, and of course we do catch someone crossing, and then the Canonian Jagdpanzer pulls back, allowing us to get a very easy shot. Pretty much impossible for us to miss that one, but you know, you never really want to say that in World of Tanks because it's World of Tanks. But 1,600 now, 952 assistance, so you're looking at about 2,500 combined damage. So if you were going for your marks of excellence, you'd probably be okay if you were going for like 3 marks, for 2 marks even. But we're not going for 2 marks if we possibly can. We want to go for as much assistance and actual damage as possible, so we can, of course, progress towards the 3 marks if we ever come to actually play this tank again. And we're just trying to optimize as well as we can so we win the game, earn as much silver, because you remember the silver operation that was going on during this period of time that was basically overpowered, like literally like millions of silver every single game. And especially if you have a really good game, you can probably pick up like 1.5 to 2 million silver in one singular game, because yeah, outrageous. But either way, we're going after the King Tiger. He does pen us. We were on full health up until that point, so it's now time to actually start trading with these boys. So we put 1 round into him, low rolled massively against the King Tiger. This tank is actually very, very powerful in terms of its damage per minute, and you can see here the reloading in about 6 seconds roughly, and that means that, you know, you can pop out, you can deal damage against things like the IS. Now, unfortunately for us, I don't notice that there's a heavy tank over to the right, and oh, of course it's a dreadnought. So we take a lovely 750 damage hit, but there's an IS still there. And at this point I'm like, you know what, it's time to go after this artillery piece, and if there's an artillery piece in the game left alive, then he needs to go back to the garage. Unfortunately he survived this long, but we load a HE round so we can pen this guy, and of course we don't pen, so typical, but either way we can now push towards him. We go for the top, unfortunately it goes into the gun, which is super annoying. I was trying to hit the kind of cupola beneath, but then we go for the lower plate, which is nice, and then the SU-14-1 just doesn't bother with it doing anything else. I suppose the reload was far too long anyway, but there you go, 4,269 damage in a pretty aggressive kind of action bit at the end of that replay. And we picked up 1,800 assistance with 1.2 million silver as well, and yeah, really good game. But the K91-2 one of my favourite premiums I've played in a while, and it's completely different to what I first thought it was like back in the day. But other than that, I hope you did enjoy this video. Don't forget that there will be the T42, the other tank that you could have picked up as part of the Holiday Ops operation, as part of like the Arnold and Mila kind of combined community event. But other than that, I hope you join me in the next video and go back and check some out of the other gameplay and tank reviews playlist that we have on screen as well. Thank you and goodbye.